the quilts were a no-brainer for me. Like, it was, like, as far as the work in the show, the quilts and the chiffon piece were like absolutely 100% what I was going to be making. They're more about the images, and they're more about the documentation of putting my family members on something that historically has been used as currency into white spaces, but also has been used as a form of documentation. It has been used to say, this is who is part of this family. Like, I'm not interested in necessarily like naming the people in them or having any sort of like imagery outside of the image, like outside of the transferred image. Really, I don't know. I guess the process for me is just like understanding where I come from and having something to like, having a concrete story that makes sense. No one really like wanted to ask questions because that's not something that they were taught to do. But it was something I was taught to do and like was encouraged to do growing up. So the process I go through in order to find ancestors and like other family members is primarily through census documents. I use a website called Family Search, and being able to access historical records, just using like a name and like birth date, and like find links to other people. One of the really fun things for me is like trying to like hear their accent through the way the name was spelled, based on its like interpretation. I think, the ropes that I'm using are a 3-ply agricultural rope, and my grandmother grew up on a tree farm, and trees were really important to her. And so yeah, I kind of wanted to honor that history of like tree farmers in Appalachia and Western North Carolina. But yeah, by using the rope. But I also think that like, there's even a larger historical context associated with ropes, and especially with Black people, and lynching, and that isn't something that I necessarily thought about at first, but it is a history that I shy away from. I had multiple titles, and In a Family Way was not one of them. That's actually one that she came up with, and it was, it's based on like this. I was telling her about like a discrepancy that I saw in one of the censuses, where it was like really confusing how people were related to one another. And she said to me, oh, well, maybe like, she said the very classic line of like, oh, well, maybe she was in a family line. Which, like, Toni Morrison is one of my favorite writers. And it's just like, is this phrase that I kept hearing, and like Toni Morrison uses it a lot, but then for my mom to say it, it was a phrase that was in the back of my mind that I never considered because of what it means and how it refers to young women being pregnant, and is not something that I ever considered for the show. But I think for my family, and like hearing my mom say it to me confirmed that it like needed to be the title of the show, because there was like so much communal raising of like children, and I think that's one thing that comes out of that situation where grandmothers end up raising their grandkids as their own daughters. I wanted to see my family on in a quilt, however that works, and really just frame the photos. I know that like I have these photos, but I also know that, over time these will age and break down, but can also be repaired. And I can't like, in theory, I could use these in my home, whereas I can't really use a 5x7 image.